Communion is not primarily a political memoir or a theological defense of Christianity. Instead, it is J.D. Vance's account of losing his Christian faith, becoming an atheist, and eventually returning to Christianity through Catholicism. His central claim is that people rarely lose faith because of intellectual arguments alone. Instead, they often lose it because of suffering, disappointment, loneliness, or because their churches fail to address the realities of life. Likewise, he argues that people often return to faith not through miraculous experiences, but because they discover that Christian beliefs produce better lives, stronger communities, and more virtuous people. He repeatedly returns to Christ's words, "By their fruits ye shall know them." For Vance, Christianity proved itself because, over time, it consistently produced the best fruit. Success isn't enough. Vance begins as Vice President of the United States, describing the ordinary chaos of taking his children to church every Sunday. This immediately introduces one of the book's themes. Family and ordinary life matter more than status. He reflects that he has achieved nearly every worldly success imaginable: Yale Law School, venture capital success, wealth, and national political office. Yet these accomplishments left him dissatisfied. As a young man, he believed success would solve everything. Instead, he found that ambition without virtue creates emptiness. He became convinced that Christianity offered something modern meritocracy could not: humility, purpose, forgiveness, family, and genuine happiness. His conversion did not begin by believing Jesus was the Son of God. Instead, it began by observing ordinary Christians. He noticed that faithful people often seemed happier, calmer, and more content than highly successful professionals. Many were poor or ordinary, yet possessed peace he lacked. Only later did he come to believe Christianity itself was true. Growing up with imperfect faith, much of the first chapter revisits his Appalachian upbringing. His grandmother Mama, already familiar from Hillbilly Elegy, becomes the book's spiritual center. She wasn't conventionally religious. She swore constantly, owned 19 loaded handguns, distrusted televangelists, and rarely attended church. Yet she deeply loved Jesus. She read scripture daily, prayed constantly, and treated Christian morality as something intensely practical. Her lessons were never abstract. She taught, don't waste your talents, protect your family, addictions destroy generations, and God expects responsibility. She believed morality mattered far more than denominational labels. Churches of his childhood. His family moved between Baptist churches, Pentecostal churches, and non-denominational evangelical churches. He enjoyed the sense of community, but noticed problems. Some churches became heavily focused on abortion, homosexuality, end-times prophecy, Republican politics, creationism, and culture wars. Meanwhile, his own family was dealing with addiction, poverty, abuse, instability, and broken relationships. The church often seemed to discuss national controversies while overlooking nearby suffering. His father's church. When reconnecting with his biological father, Vance found something his earlier churches lacked: real community. Members helped each other financially. When his father needed transportation, the church bought him a used van. He also admired seeing people of different races genuinely worship together. Still, politics increasingly blended with religion. Most members voted Republican largely because of abortion, even while acknowledging Republicans often neglected working-class families. Losing his faith. The turning point wasn't college. It wasn't reading Richard Dawkins. It wasn't evolution. It was grief. Mama became seriously ill. She struggled financially. His mother returned to addiction. Then Mama died while Vance prepared to deploy to Iraq. At precisely the moment he most needed spiritual guidance, he felt the church wasn't speaking to his problems. One sermon focused on the rapture and the second coming. He remembers sitting in anger thinking, do these people know addicts? Have they experienced this kind of grief? He didn't lose belief immediately. But the emotional foundation supporting belief began to collapse. The unexplained car accident. Driving after Mama's funeral, he lost control of his car on a mountain road. He expected to die. Instead, moments before striking the guardrail, the car simply stopped. He cannot explain what happened. Even during his atheist years, he couldn't completely dismiss the possibility that something beyond himself had intervened. He never presents it as proof of God. Instead, it remained a persistent mystery. Becoming an atheist. Vance argues that atheists often tell themselves an overly intellectual story about why they left religion. He did the same. He used to claim, I became an atheist because of evolution. Looking back, he says this wasn't really true. The real causes were sadness, betrayal, disappointment, and emotional isolation. Ideas came afterward. His emotional connection to Christianity had already weakened. He compares losing faith to divorce rather than changing political opinions. Faith had been woven into family traditions, songs, funerals, prayers, and shared memories. Rejecting Christianity meant reinterpreting all of those experiences as merely psychological or cultural. Trust in knowledge. One of the book's more philosophical sections concerns how humans know anything. Vance argues that nearly all knowledge depends on trust. Most people believe historical events, scientific conclusions, and economic theories because trusted institutions tell them so. Very little is personally verified. Religious belief, therefore, isn't unique in relying partly upon trusted witnesses. The question becomes, which people and institutions deserve trust? Deployment to Iraq deepened his doubts. He encountered Muslims' death, violence, and suffering. Seeing sincere believers from other religions complicated his understanding of Christianity. If sincere faith alone proves nothing, what makes Christianity true? Combined with scientific objections and emotional pain, these experiences pushed him fully into atheism. Meritocracy and ambition. After the Marines, Vance attended Ohio State and then Yale Law School. These chapters describe entering America's elite institutions. Initially, he loved them. Everything rewarded intelligence, ambition, credentials, and competition. But over time, he noticed something disturbing. Many exceptionally successful people appeared anxious, lonely, status-obsessed, and restless. Success became an endless race. Each achievement simply created another goal. He gradually realized that meritocracy answers, how do I get ahead? But not, how should I live? Wealth. Vance entered venture capital and became financially successful. Again, he found the same pattern. Money solved many practical problems. It did not solve existential ones. The people chasing wealth often seemed less satisfied than ordinary families focused on children, church, neighborhood, and service. His priorities slowly began changing. Marriage and fatherhood accelerated this process. His children didn't need him to become richer. They needed him to become better. Fatherhood. Fatherhood becomes one of the book's emotional centers. Watching his children grow forced him to ask, what kind of man should I become? Not, what kind of resume should I build? He increasingly thought about virtue, patience, sacrifice, and self-control. These questions eventually led him back toward Christianity. Rediscovering virtue. Instead of beginning with miracles or theology, Vance began studying ethics. He became interested in classical virtue. He concluded that Christianity possessed the richest and most coherent understanding of human character. Its teachings addressed pride, envy, anger, greed, humility, love, and forgiveness. Modern culture often celebrates achievement. Christianity asks whether achievement is making someone a better person. This distinction becomes one of the book's recurring themes. Politics. Although politics appears throughout the book, Vance repeatedly argues that politics cannot replace religion. Politics may shape laws. It cannot produce meaning, purpose, forgiveness, healthy families, or inner peace. He criticizes both major political traditions when they attempt to substitute ideology for moral formation. He also argues that churches become weaker when they become consumed by partisan battles instead of spiritual formation. Why Catholicism? Eventually, Vance became convinced Christianity was true. The next question became, which church? He explains why he chose Catholicism. His reasons include stability. Catholic doctrine changes very slowly. He found this reassuring in an age of rapid cultural change. Intellectual depth. Catholicism possessed centuries of theological reflection. It offered answers to difficult questions that he felt evangelicalism sometimes treated superficially. Historical continuity. Catholic worship connected believers to nearly 2,000 years of Christian tradition. He valued belonging to something much larger than contemporary American culture. Sacramental life. He increasingly believed Christianity should not merely be believed intellectually. It should be practiced physically through rituals, prayer, confession, and communion. These practices reshape character over time. Criticism of modern life. Several themes recur throughout the later chapters. Radical individualism. Modern society encourages people to prioritize career, autonomy, and personal fulfillment. Christianity instead teaches obligation, family, neighbors, community, God, and endless striving. He repeatedly criticizes the mindset that every achievement should become another stepping stone. Without limits, ambition becomes a vice. Technology. Modern technology constantly distracts people. Silence, prayer, and contemplation become increasingly difficult. Christian traditions deliberately create spaces away from constant stimulation. Consumerism. Modern capitalism encourages people to define themselves through consumption. Christianity teaches that identity comes from being created in God's image rather than from possessions. Community, one of the strongest themes in the book, is community. Vance believes churches succeed when they function as genuine communities rather than lecture halls. He remembers churches that bought vehicles for struggling families, organized meals, visited the sick, cared for addicts, and welcomed newcomers. These experiences ultimately persuaded him more than theological arguments. Christianity became believable because Christians actually lived it. The meaning of communion, it refers to more than the Catholic Eucharist. It also refers to communion with God, family, history, tradition, and fellow believers. Modern life isolates people. Christianity reconnects them. Communion becomes both a sacrament and a description of the life he believes humans were created to live. Epilogue. The book ends with humility rather than certainty. Vance emphasizes that this is his journey, not a universal proof. He does not claim every skeptic has identical reasons for doubting. Nor does he argue that intellectual questions are unimportant. Instead, he hopes his story might help people understand why faith is lost and perhaps how it can be recovered. His final conviction is simple: people flourish when they orient their lives toward God rather than toward status, wealth, or success. The book's key takeaways: people usually lose faith because of lived experience more than intellectual arguments. Material success cannot substitute for meaning or virtue. Strong families and genuine communities matter more than ideology. Christianity should be judged by the character it produces, its fruits. Ambition is valuable only when directed toward becoming a better person, not merely a more successful one. Fatherhood, marriage, and ordinary responsibilities transformed Vance's understanding of life. He returned to Christianity gradually by observing the lives of faithful people before accepting its theological claims. Catholicism appealed to him because of its stability, historical continuity, intellectual tradition, and sacramental life. Politics has an important role but cannot answer humanity's deepest questions. The deepest form of human fulfillment comes through communion with God, family, tradition, and community, rather than through achievement alone.